Welcome to our presentation, Changing Times, Changing Goals, Course Outcomes, Checklists, and Can-Do Statements. I'm Tom. I think Mary and I would win maybe the two most difficult to pronounce places of work. I'm coming from Ritsumeikan University, which is in Japan, and Mary is from?
I'm at Chemeketa Community College, and for those of you in Oregon, know that that's in Salem, the capital. And we are going to talk about I'm going to talk about course outcome checklists and can-do lists and our shortcomings and our successes that we had using them. And then after that, Tom is going to talk about his can-do list, the development, utilization, results, and he'll talk about how the efficacy of using them. Do you want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah, so actually, before we do anything, I actually gave a talk at Mary's College just a couple days ago on a similar topic, and we made just a 5-question survey. It's just a Google form, very short survey. It'll only take you, I don't know, 2 minutes to answer the survey. You can access it through the tiny URL Can Do Survey 2022 or the QR code. And if you do access it, when you finish, you can see what other people have already said. Like it'll show you the results of the survey right away. I think there was only maybe like 10 data points in there right now, but it was interesting that already the data points are kind of spread out. So those of you who are here, if you could do that, I'll put this QR code up at the very end as well, if you miss out on it now, and there'll be links at the end too. You don't have to leave your name or any contact information. It's completely anonymous. So yeah, please do that if possible. We'll put this up again at the very end, and also a link where you could access it. But Mary,
you put the link in the chat so that we can click on the link, because we can't click on the link in your presentation.
All right, let's see. It might take me a minute to get to do that. See here.
Yeah, that's good.
Hopefully that's going to be okay.
That'll be the long link.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to our presentation here. Is that okay? Is that link okay? Hopefully, did that work?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
Great.
Just want to go back here for a second about at Chemeketa. So I've worked there since 2016. Even before I worked there, we always have a long list of projects we want to do, these dream projects that we want to work on. So for years, they had been talking about making course outcome checklists for instructors to use in the classroom, and also for can-do lists or statements for students. So when I started working there, after I started working there in 2016, and then in 2019 we started working on them. So I'll bring that up again. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Chemeketa. Our ESOL program has about 350 students, mostly domestic students, some newly arrived immigrants and refugees. We see a lot of Afghans and Ukrainians now. Some students we have been here for 30 years, and they want to improve their English. Or we do have a handful of international students as well, from different places. Even though we have just a handful, they're from Japan, Ivory Coast, Haiti, just to name a few. And a little bit about our program here. We have 6 levels plus applied English. So we have our main core classes, reading, writing, listening, speaking, and then we have some electives, grammar, pronunciation, technology. We also have IETs, integrated education and training. That is where students are learning content with the college professors, and then they come to us for English support, an English support class. Right now we have IETs for CNA, so certified nursing assistants, welding, early childhood education and truck driving as well. That's a new one for us. We hope to have new ones in the future. So we see here that the levels A to B are all life skills, and then students move up to the more academic levels before they go into the college. We do have this applied English classes, which are students are taking the Writing 90 course with all college students, or they're taking Com 100, which is a communication class, and they also meet the ESL teacher for help. So that's a support class for those classes in college, and then they go on up to the college, hopefully. And so our curriculum has been based on the OLS, Oregon Adult Learning Standards, but this month, or since this term, we have been realigning our curriculum to the OELPS, the Oregon English Learning Proficiency Standards, with also, those are the lower levels, and then the higher levels are the OCRS, the Oregon Adult College and Career Readiness Standards. We are, we are checking to make sure there's a clear progression in the levels. But we do have part-time teachers. We have a mix of part-time and full-time, and we're not always in the same level in the same class. So we wanted to make sure we have some, the teachers understood what are the course outcomes for each class. So I usually teach in the higher levels, but this term I'm teaching in the lower levels. And so I had to make sure, okay, I need to obviously look at the course outlines to see to know how to plan for my classes. Okay, so we'll move on here. I'm going to show you an example of our attempt of our course outline checklist. So here is one for the C1 listening class. We have at the top of this paper, this was all paper-based because we started this in March of 2019, not March, in the fall of 2019. And we have these course outcomes for that's the goal of our class. And then on these columns here, 1 through 4, that was meant for teachers in class to check how well are the students doing these tasks. So these course outcomes help with our planning, but then this is a reminder to teachers that, yeah, we have to be checking how well are students doing these, and we have a little code here. So the purpose was to create awareness to help teachers who are moving around in levels to be aware of the course outcomes, to make sure that they're checking them throughout the 10-week term. And another reason we wanted to do it is to promote discussions with the students at the end of the term. We meet with students. Are they going to progress to the next level? Is there enough evidence that they have mastered the outcomes? And so we could show them that, we checked, these are the times we checked, and you have a lot of H's, so you're definitely ready for the next level. Or maybe we have some mixture of L's and M's, and maybe that student is going to stay in that class for the next term. We do have some occasions where the student elects to move back down to another level, to the previous level. So as I said, we piloted this in fall of 19. All the full-time teachers made these lists, and we used it in winter of 2020 as well. Sorry, this is the student part. So students are evaluating themselves. So we have the can-do statements that are based on the course outcomes. And in the beginning of the term, the first week, students would rate what they think they can do here. And then at the end of the term, we'd hand out again this paper, and then students would use a different color pen or just rate themselves again. That was the idea. I'm going to show you what one looked like. Hopefully you can see this screen over here. This was a 3-page paper. So we have the teacher part at the top, and then the student evaluation here. Here's the listening part that's aligned with the goals the outcomes. We had students check their CASAS listening score, keep track of that. Then we thought we added things we thought were important that we wanted students to be working on in class: vocabulary, technology, working in groups, solving problems in class, doing their homework, study skills outside of class. So these are some things that we thought were important. And they're not all can-do statements, just to note there. So I just wanted to show that. Let me see, I don't know if there's a question about this. Yes, I can share that with you, but you might not want it after what I say, but you could get some ideas from it for sure. So let me go back to the slideshow and talk about some of the shortcomings. Well, maybe you kind of guessed it's really long, and it was paper-based. So having the teachers kind of collect these papers, 3 pages each for each student, and handing it out again, and being able to like check off 4 times a term in the 10-week term, are they doing these things? It was kind of difficult to track and to actually use. I guess it wasn't user-friendly. I believe we were overambitious in what we wanted in that one piece of paper. And so then it's interesting, even though the instructors created this, some of them were, I can't use this, it's too hard. And then the pandemic set in. So that's where we left it. But now, as we are back in the classroom and we are realigning with the OELPs and OKRs, we feel that, yeah, we did start on this. We have the experience. We know how to make it better. So we are revising these and we're reattempting. We're going to use technology this time, either Google Forms or connect it to Canvas somehow. But we do realize that these are important. It was just that we were overambitious, and yeah, that's our story. And Tom's going to talk about his success. And yeah, I would say, Marielle, you could adapt it for sure. We'll make sure that you guys have it. And then here is Tom's part about Ritsumeikan.
Oh, okay. Do I have I got the little dot. No, I don't have the little dot. Oh, I got the little dot. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I guess, well, first off, I'm coming from Ritsumeikan University. I said before, it's a fairly large university in the center of Japan. We have 3 main campuses. Kyoto, I teach at the Lake Biwa campus, which is 15 minutes from Kyoto. And we have an Osaka campus where I teach. I teach in the College of Science and Engineering. It's a fairly large department. There's 4,000 students, about 1,000. So about 1,000 incoming freshmen every year. The majority of our students do go into grad school, probably about 80%, not necessarily staying at Ritsumeikan, but so they're eventually going to actually use English when they go on to their career. So we have about 29 English teachers. I'm one of the 6 full-time professors there, and we have 7 contracted full-time people. It's typical in Japan where now people are hired on 5-year contracts. It's, a way for them to, save money, not being, doing stuff that really shouldn't be done. We do have 16 part-time people who've been with us a long time. So part-time teachers actually kind of have more security than full-time contracted people nowadays. That's a different point. But we have 8 standardized courses. So the students have to take English language with science content for 8 courses. They have to pass these classes to graduate. There, of course, are other courses as well. But basically, they cover these 8 courses in the first 2 years. So in the first semester, they would have 2 English classes. We would call it reading skills and listening skills, and it's all science-based. So in reading class, if they're reading about airplane design, in listening class, they'll be listening to something about airplane design. So everything's connected both horizontally and vertically. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about English 5. So that would be our 2nd year course. So they've already had a little bit of English. And we want to make our system basically a step-by-step system. At the end of it, we want the students to get here. So we talked to the science and engineering faculty. What do you need when you go out into the real world with English to do your job as a civil engineer or somebody who works in robotics or physics or whatever it is? And they gave us a lot of ideas. The goals basically of the whole program, there was academic skills that they wanted, communication, presentation, research and writing skills. So that's where we started. And then we worked backwards. So, their first semester, where are they? And how do we get step by step to what the department wants? So first off, for the 8 courses, we had course descriptions for everything. And then you get more detail with course goals. So I think these course goals, the level of this is similar to Mary's checklist. And then can-do lists, so more specific. And we actually started this 10 years ago when we completed making all of our own materials. So we don't use any outside text. We've created all of our texts because they're very science-based. And in that first year then that we were using our new self-created textbooks from 2012, we had all of the can-do lists inside the text, paper-based basically, but students would evaluate themselves. By 2015, we had the lists and students evaluating themselves in week or meeting 1. And in Japan, it's typically 15 meetings or a 15-week semester and then meeting 15. In 2016, we moved that online. So students would input it and they could remember what they did and they could see, and then also we could start tracking it. And then in 2017, we moved to kind of force students to complete the can-do list. They had to do the meeting 1 can-do list in order to then access some information online later. So basically, most of them did the meeting 1, but not everybody did the meeting 15 list. But we'll look at the data in a little bit. So let me give you an example. I already said we were going to look at English 5 academic skills. So this would be the first course of their second year. And I'm not going to read this, but basically it's a continuation then of English 1 through 4. And in this particular class, we worked with writing, and then we were moving into scientific method, engineering process. And as a group, they would have to make a proposal about their idea. So that was kind of the overall course description. And then some of our goals, well, the goals have to reflect the description. So there's going to be something in the goal about writing. There's going to be something in the goals about understanding scientific method, engineering process, and then listening to people present their idea, and then as a group making an idea that they're going to present. So when we get down finally to the can-do lists, we had 5 different lists of can-do just for this course. So what exactly should the student be able to do after they finish the course? And I'm just going to show you an example of the writing skills and the scientific method skills. Of course, I could go on and give you more, but you probably don't want that. So anyway, writing skills, since maybe that's common for everybody. Mary said on her list, they had some things that were not can do. And actually, that's when we started, we had some things that were not can do. We've since switched these. But for example, for writing skills, we ended up with 10 can do statements. And like the first one says, I know the difference. Well, we just switched that to I can understand, or I can see the difference between dependent and independent clauses. So we have switched all of these to can do. And I think most of the things that you would write probably should be in can do, and we can use them in can do. So the thing is though, whatever is here as a can do statement, it has to be addressed in your lesson at some point. You can't have a can do statement that then you don't teach anything about that. So here I've kind of changed the color of 2 and 4. And within our lesson, then when we're doing writing, we had a combined, I know the 8 basic sentence punctuation patterns, and I can write these. So it's hard to see on the screen probably, but these 8 basic sentence patterns are coming from Purdue University. So they're the same ones that Purdue uses on their OWL website. We modify them a little bit, but basically it's the same ones that Purdue University uses. And then students, within this little bracket, they can tell us what pattern number it is. Of course, they've had examples, and in English 1, 2, 3, 4, they've already worked with this. So choosing the pattern is actually quite easy for them. They get that. But now we're focusing a little bit more on the writing part, and whatever sentence they write from now on for English 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever they write in their textbook, there's always this blank at the end of tell us what pattern you're writing. So you're going to keep at this. You're not just doing it a one-shot thing. And the more you can repeat, the better. So that was the idea behind this. It's just one of the lessons. And then I'll just show you something quick for scientific method. Scientific method, we had 5 can-do things. And one of them was finding information about a person, and the other one was analyzing past experiments and making suggestions. So when we design a lesson for that, we're looking at past experiments. This case, we were looking at how life came about and different experiments that scientists did. And we show them Francisco Redi, which is kind of a famous experiment with flies and meat. And then we have them go out, to the internet, and they have to find something about John Needham. And as you can see, again, there's always the bracket here for their sentence pattern. And of course, then they have to draw a picture of Needham's experiment. And then we go on and we actually do this again for Louis Pasteur. And of course, we still haven't discovered where life came from yet, but people are working on it. So what's the results of this? Well, actually, one of the things that in Japan, everybody uses the TOEIC test. That's just what they do, love it or hate it, but they use the TOEIC test. And TOEIC suggests that when people do a can-do list of TOEIC ideas, people who rate themselves higher do in fact have a higher TOEIC score, and people who rate themselves lower have a lower TOEIC score. So there's a kind of a connection predictor. So actually, we kind of wanted to check that out. So I just did a random check on English 9, which is an elective class, which actually happens to be the only class that we talk about TOEIC. And I wanted to see, like, okay, what would students say with this can-do list in meeting 1 and in meeting 15, and does it actually match their grade in the class? So here's what we came up with: a student A, student B, and student C. And if we take a look, I just want to point this out though. So then meeting 1, basically for each item, we have a student can choose a minus, like I don't really get it, or a plus minus, maybe I kind of sort of get it, or a plus, they have confidence. So student A here in meeting 1, they did a plus minus for I can describe a scene using the subject verb object pattern. And this is, basically matches the TOEIC picture part. And by the end of the term, they had a plus. So in meeting 1, student can see they had a mixture of minuses, plus minus, and a couple pluses. But at the end of the term, they rated themselves as all pluses. Student B, in meeting 1, they had a mixture. And at the end of the term, basically, they felt like they went up. Actually, they went down on this one. So students can go down. Hopefully they're going up. But basically, this student had a mixture. And if you look at C, this student started off with almost everything was a minus. And at the end of the term, they felt that they were doing okay, and even a couple things they did well. So what would we expect for the grade, the final grade for students? Basically, I just took a look, and actually in reality, it was. The student A had the highest grade in the class. Student C had the lowest passing grade in the class. Some students failed because they didn't attend. And exactly right in the middle was student B. So even with this, just checking out one small test of this, if TOEIC was right, it does seem to match. Students can evaluate themselves, and it will be a predictor for their final grade as well.
Let's look at the chat. I think we have a chat. So,
But we got lots of chat.
yeah, maybe. Oh yeah, TOEIC. So yes, TOEIC is the test of English for international communication used in Japan.
That's right.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Caught up on chats. Okay.
Okay, so let's look a little more detail in some of the data. So I'm going to tell you what happened. Oh, sorry, with Ritsumeikan. Okay, so basically, how did we get data for this or code it? So if a student chose a minus, we gave them 1 point. If they chose a plus minus, that was 2, and if they chose a plus, that was 3. So we could then check them, if they chose a minus at the beginning of the term, and then they chose a plus minus at the end of the term, they would have a gain of 1 point for that item. And of course, a student could go down. They could choose a plus at the beginning of the term and feel that they didn't actually know what that can do was, and they would go back to a 2 or even a 1, and they could have a minus. So we want to know, hopefully as teachers, we want everybody to have a gain for every can do. It's going to be a little bit up and down, but overall, we would hope that the data would show us that students feel like they're getting value and they're gaining in each of these can do statements. And in fact, if we take a look, so we finally were ready to collect data 2018 and 19. And so we do have data for that, and they're going to be represented in blue and green here. So it'll be the blue and green. And then 2020 was kind of a emergency response in Japan because the panic of the pandemic happened in April, which is the beginning of the school year in Japan. And basically they shut us all down and made us do everything with email. We had 0 contact with students. There was no Zoom. It was just email. And the university was not ready, even though it's a big university, even though we're science and engineering, they didn't have the infrastructure to have everybody on Zoom at the same time. So everything was email. And they actually shortened our semester from 15 to 12 weeks. So yeah, and we had no time, of course, to rewrite any can-do things. So everything was, the can-dos were all the same, but a completely different method of instruction. Email, if that's instruction, I don't know. And then in 2021, we had Zoom. And we also created and what we called an OLAS system, an online assignment submission system. Mary said I should tell everybody that we don't use Blackboard, or what are the things?
Canvas.
Canvas.
Moodle.
We don't use Moodle. All of our coding, all of our stuff that's online, we wrote the code for it. One of the guys I work with is a master coder, and I can get by in some code. Anyways, so yeah, it's all handmade materials and handmade code for our
Classroom
computers,
management
for
system.
classroom management. Yeah. So we had Zoom, and this OLAS system basically was, instead of walking around the classroom and looking at the students' text to see that they wrote about, for example, the Needham character, did they draw a picture, that kind of stuff. That was all put on online. And then instead of walking around the classroom and quickly assessing, now students, this is all done online, and teachers had to check all this, which was, of course, very, very time consuming. But when we think about this, we would hope as teachers that they need us. And in the classroom, students would have gain. And with email, we would hope that somehow students are still feeling they're learning something. And then Zoom, we would think that would go up again. So let's take a look just at the writing.
Do you want to talk about these numbers?
Oh yeah, sorry, these numbers, Mary asked me, right? So I said about 1,000 students a year join as freshmen. Roughly 300 of them are very low level, and they kind of stream into something different, very basic English. But about 700 are within this system. And 2018, 2019, I said already that students kind of had to do the first can-do week, But if they don't do it in meeting 15, they're not included. So they had to do the can do meeting 1 and meeting 15 to be included in the data. And it's interesting that these numbers are lower than the 700. So there's, a couple hundred students don't do meeting 15. But when we were email, it bumped up to almost 700, like almost all the students. And I don't know if this is exactly perfect, but somehow when everybody had switched to Zoom, I don't know, they just did it, what they were supposed to do. So yeah, we would get 700. So the data has increased. That's just kind of an interesting tidbit for collecting
Check
data.
the chat again.
Nope.
So we got a chat. Maybe someone has a question. Oh, yeah, is it all of Japan that doesn't use the Canvas and Moodle, or is it just your place?
It's just us.
Yeah.
Our science and engineering geek teachers do science and engineering things. Everybody else does Moodle, or I think Blackboard is another one that they do.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's look at just the writing skills. So we would think that for 2018, 2019, so these bars represent gain. So there's gain for everything. That's the good news. Every student felt overall that they gained something. How much gain? So 2018, 2019, we would expect would have more gain, and we'd expect them to be semi-equal. And we can see that for each of these can-do statements. So number 1 here matches number 1 here. I can properly identify dependent and independent clauses. And we can see 2018, 2019, basically on everything, they're even. Sometimes blue is higher than green, or sometimes green higher than blue, but they're basically even. And the blue and the green in a normal year has more gain than the emergency year of 2020 of only email, and 2021 of Zoom and our OLAS system. We would think that these would be higher and this would be the lowest, and then this one would go up again. And it's true every time except for this number 1. I don't know why, but apparently with email only, I can properly identify dependent and independent clauses, was for some reason higher than when we switched to Zoom. Everything else, the gain was lower for email only and then higher for the Zoom. And if we look at scientific method, let's go over here. Oh, sorry, I'll let you do it. Okay.
Oops.
Sorry. If we look at scientific method, we can see it basically followed the same pattern. So students do need us. They feel like they learn more within the normal classroom, face-to-face meeting. And then with email, we would expect it to go down, and in fact it did. For some reason, this one is a fairly even match, but it kind of fits the can-do. I can organize an experiment in a logical way using the scientific method. Yeah, maybe it doesn't really matter if they have Zoom, whether the engineering students can do that or not. But in the other cases, students would go up when they had the Zoom. So this course did have the 5 different areas. So here we can see combined. So all of the can-dos are combined here for writing, scientific method, engineering process, preparing a proposal, and delivering a proposal. So it's easy to see here that for preparing a proposal and delivering a proposal, the can-do statements are still group work statements. But in the email system, they had no way of presenting to us, and they just made their PowerPoint slides of their idea and turned that in as individuals. There was no group, and thus we can see that reflected here, that can-do statements that talk about group definitely are going to be lower for this preparing a proposal and delivering a proposal. So I think this also does maybe show that students were answering honestly for the most part. So, okay, does any of this?
Did you talk about those?
Yeah, well, so, yeah, this is what we came up with. There's no substitute then for classroom-based instruction. Students need us. Great, yay. Zoom-based sessions are significantly more effective, I think so, than email. But email is a good alternative. If that's the only thing that's available to you, it can still be effective, especially if it's not emergency planning, if it was actual planning. But yeah, like I said, we can see that students definitely need some form of group work opportunity to feel accomplishment in group work related skills. That's kind of common sense, right? But is all of this can-do stuff worth it? You know, Mary and I were talking about this. And so there is some data that supports this. The American Council on Teaching of Foreign Languages says can-do statements have two purposes. Basically helping teachers create the curriculum and for the language learners to provide a way to start chart their progress. And we would say also for the scientists to chart their scientific knowledge, because that was like half of our can-do statements were about science, basically, rather than English. And I think it works for that too. And then as far as goal setting and student achievement, there is research that supports that it provides more intrinsic motivation for students. And they're not just trying to get a grade, but they're trying to improve their skill set. And I think that's true. And then actually, yeah, I said before, but TOEIC. So TOEIC found that there is a direct connection between, or well, I say moderately strong related, between a student's self-evaluation and their actual score. And we found that that actually crosses over into grades as well. So final takeaway for us, for Ritsumeikan, if you guys are thinking about can-do lists, is it worth the effort? I would say absolutely. It helps in curriculum and course design, but it's better to organize and standardize them first, as Mary will attest to. You're not going to get it right the first year you try it, but you got to get started. And then you'll be adjusting for a few years, probably. There is a fairly strong connection to motivation, and it did help us recognize weakness. Students, if they said they weren't learning something, we had to reevaluate our materials, and there was connection to the outcomes. So that's kind of it for us. And if you do want to take a look at these slides, or you want to contact us, or you want to have some links to can-do goals, you can use this tiny URL, or TESOL 2022 PH Pals Hughes.
I'll put that in the chat.
So, Miki will put that in the, sorry, Miki's my wife. I'm calling her my wife. Mary, we've been friends too long. Mary will put that in the chat, and you can access that. And there also is a link then to the can-do survey, which it's
right.
this QR code again, but that's it from us.
And does anyone have any questions or anything, comments?
We have just a few minutes, I guess.
We hope this was helpful in a way for you guys.
No, you guys did great. What good timing.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that the like anything that's data supported, like you were saying, the benefits of doing the can-do list, but like I always kind of think about this like black box that is language acquisition, you know, and like especially the data that you presented, like not just in curriculum design, but also in like proving that like I am teaching a thing and that they are learning it. You know what I mean? It's a very like it quantifies the mystery a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we're going to learn. There I have taught it. There they have learned it. Like, that's very gratifying for me, I feel like, you know, because a lot of times we're just kind of, otherwise it can feel like we're just like throwing spaghetti at a wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's especially for, you know, teaching in the science and engineering department, we have to fill out reports at the end of every year. And they want to know, science guys want data. So what did the TOEIC score do? But they also, this data supports them that they're learning all these other sciencey things.
Right.
It does help us to be left alone somewhat and for us to get money from the department. So there's value, not only personal, hey, they
Our
learn
two
something.
favorite things.
Yeah, yeah, but
Money and leave us alone.
also get some support from the department.
Yeah, I know teachers don't really tend, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, but I have seen that, teachers don't, especially having been in academic settings where I feel like I've seen the scientists juxtaposed with the teachers, where you can compare, and like as a group, teachers seem to be less concerned with data than scientists. But me as a teacher, because really I'm a linguist and I'm a science, like I'm more of like a scientist. I'm more concerned with data. Like, are we doing what we say what we're doing, and how can that thing even be done? And yeah, I really think that and it gets at the like sort of like less quantifiable, like when you were talking about the intrinsic motivation and like
Yeah.
what's really required like within a student to succeed at learning anything.
Yeah.
And I think it cultivates that, even just sitting down for 5 minutes and going through and thinking about it. I don't know if I can do that. I don't even know what that is. Yeah, I can do that. I've seen it where I've used it. I've seen it definitely like translate into like more engagement in the class, like throughout, so I think it's really exciting stuff.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, well, this is also being recorded and I will post it in the our lovely internet goddesses box, and she will post it online so you guys can revisit this when you'd like.
Yes, and we'll send her that PDF of our old checklist.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Mary. And thank you all of you for being here. To
Thanks
get
for
back
coming.
to the main room, all you have to do is go down to the bottom right button where it says leave room, and you'll be taken automatically back to the main ORT-cell conference room.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.